Welcome back, guys. E30 Source here with another video. I know it's been too long since I made a video, but I'm working on the edit today and it's time to do an exhaust. I haven't touched this car in a couple months now. I just got too busy with other projects, but figured today would be a good day to just do an exhaust video, and here's what the muffler looks like on it right now. It's all rotted out and really nasty. It makes too much noise. It really doesn't sound very good. So I'm gonna have a little clip following with what it sounds like before, and then we'll get the job done and do an after video. So excuse the jumper car that I have in the background here, but starting it up, it really doesn't sound very good at all. And if you heard that squealing, that's a squealing alternator in the engine bay. So as many of you know, E30s are notorious for their rust problems, especially over by the muffler and the muffler hangers and in the trunk area. So the way an E30 muffler is hung, it's got two clamps on it on either side. My recommendation is to take these old rusted clamps off, is a blowtorch and some PB blaster. And here's what I did. I took a blowtorch just like this, and I heated up the nut enough to where it's hot enough to just come off the threads. If you don't have a torch and PB blaster, you're just going to break the bolts and you're going to break the clamps, and then you're going to have to, one, go out and buy new clamps, and two, finding them is very, very hard nowadays. They do sell the kits, however they're very, very cheaply made, I'll say. Bosel is one brand to stay away from. You'll probably break the clamps when putting them on. They're really, really cheaply made. But just get the nut hot enough to the point where you can easily take it off with your ratchet. And after sitting on the torch for a little while, they'll easily spin off despite how much rust they were on. And they're held on with a 13mm nut. I also heated up the other side's nut, and then after it being hot for a while, I then sprayed PB blaster on it. It makes a lot of smoke. It's not good to breathe in, but it definitely helped take the nut off. And after spinning it off enough, the muffler will just drop right down. It kind of scared me because I didn't expect it. But yeah, after taking the muffler hangers off enough, the muffler will drop down, and then it's held on by the other mounts. Now the next mating place is the catalytic converter to the muffler. And my recommendation is most likely these bolts and nuts that hold them together are so seized on that you will not be able to get them off. The catalytic converter gets so hot that the bolts just kind of freeze on, especially if somebody did work before with aftermarket bolts. I believe these are, and so the heads and everything are all rounded off because they've just rotted out. So what I did was I did try heating them and trying to spin them off with just a socket. It didn't work, so what I ended up doing was just taking an angle grinder and chopping them right off, and here's the video of that. And I didn't cut them all the way down to the flange. I cut the nut just before it and the bolt off, so then I was able to break the exhaust loose from the rest of the parts. There are 3 holding them together on this ETA. I believe on the I's and IS's and the IX's, they're held on with 2 together. They're 2 pipes, not just 1. So after cutting all 3 of those nuts off, taking the muffler bracket loose and everything, I was trying to separate the catalytic converter from the resonator and just wasn't working. So I just ended up taking the muffler and just kind of pulling it back and forth from the rear of the car to separate it from the resonator and cat, and it did eventually work. And there it goes. It just kind of snapped the rest of the bolts that were stuck in the flange from the rest of the exhaust. So out with the old and in with the new. Here's what the old exhaust looks like. I kept one of the muffler brackets on there because it wasn't connected to anything anyway. But here's what the flange looks like, and 2 of the bolts are still in the catalytic converter and 1 stayed on the resonator. Then I cut the rest of the stud off from the catalytic converter, being careful not to hit the flange and cause an exhaust leak later on. But just cut the stud off to the point where it's flat up against it, and then I got ready to drill it. And I actually got really lucky because I was able to take a punch and knock out the old studs with a hammer. It took a little bit of playing with, but they did come out. I was really impressed by that. I was expecting to have to drill it out, which would have been a real pain, but they came right out with a punch and a hammer. I was able to reuse the old muffler clamps, luckily, because they are originals. However, they were a little rusty, so I cleaned them up a little bit, and I gave them a fresh coat of paint all the way around. This will just prevent rust later on. I got a brand new exhaust gasket. These are really, really cheap. They're like $2 or $3. Bosel made this one, but whatever. And it was, yeah, an exhaust flange gasket. It's called part number 256772 on that, I believe it was. And then I got fresh nuts and bolts as well. I believe these are M10 by 35 millimeter long. And then I set everything up ready to go with the gasket and the 3 bolts sticking through. And I also took down some of the paneling that goes above the muffler that was all rotted out to the point where I couldn't save it. I took that all out because it was rubbing on the old muffler before and making some noise. What a mess. And then I got the last nut off the muffler hanger off the old muffler to get ready to put on the new one. The biggest pain of this whole thing is probably putting the new exhaust back up, but with the help of a floor jack, you can actually have it hold the muffler part while you support it up in the front and try to get it onto the flange and put the bolts through it. Once you get all 3 bolts threaded on and nuts just holding them in place, you don't have to tighten them down just yet, but you can then use the floor jack and put the muffler all the way up into the body so you can mount the muffler clamps as well as the little hanger that hangs right near the differential and drive shaft. Then start to clamp up the back end with the muffler. I'd suggest loosely putting it on for right now, because the exhaust will shift around as you tighten up other things. Just get the nut and the washer on there enough so that it just won't go anywhere on top of you. With all 4 muffler clamps held together and with the nuts on them, I would suggest now you can tighten them down. You don't have to crank them on, and please don't throw them on with a gun. Just, you know, a little bit tighter than tight is fine with the ratchet. And then I tighten down the 3 bolts that hold the resonator to the catalytic converter. You want to make sure that these are on pretty tight so they don't cause an exhaust leak. But once you get them on, you know, they're pretty much good to go. And then there's a small rubber band looking hanger that hangs off of where it's kind of near the differential. You can use a pry bar to just kind of slide it over, and the exhaust has a mount for it. They can be kind of a pain, but I recommend just like lubing it up with WD-40 and then just kind of prying at it until it gets over and will hold the exhaust on. Once that's done, it's pretty much a completed job. It sits a lot better, and then here's the sound. And excuse the noise of the jumper car, but here's the startup sound of it. It sounds a lot better than before. The new exhaust sounds so much better. I can't believe it. Now, what I do is just check for exhaust leaks, and if none are present, you're good to go. You can hear the difference of the idle once it's up to operating temperature. The exhaust sounds a lot better. But yeah, once it's all good, if you have no exhaust leaks, go drive it and enjoy. But thanks for watching. More videos will come, but I'm a little busy right now. So thanks for watching again. See you guys later. Bye.